is in South Beach. Does that mean the Heat are returning to the NBA Finals? And of course, there's news out of Big D involving Mike McCarthy. I guess if you want to call it Cowboys. Why are they relevant anyway? Max will answer that question. Stephen A., I'm in the house too. First take, next.
NBA trade deadline is in the books. Kyle Lowry's still a Raptor.
I don't know if Victor Oladipo has that tough skin to match that Miami Heat coach.
Celtics made their significant move today. It's not enough.
We're no longer going to be living in basketball purgatory in the Windy City.
Now you add Aaron Gordon to the mix. Huge pickup for Denver.
One of the best things that could have possibly happened for the Clippers just happened.
You could say that Miami was the winner of the trade deadline.
Did we just go first person before the show even started? That means Stephen A. must be on one after all the action that happened yesterday. The trade deadline came and went. Gentlemen, happy Friday. A feel-good Friday to everybody at home. Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman, I'm Molly Karam Rose. Bellas, let's dive right into it, and we'll start with the Clippers. The Atlanta Hawks trade Rajon Rondo to L.A. to the Clippers for Lou Williams, sweet Lou, and future second-round picks. The Clips are third in the West and now have playoff Rondo. Mr. Smith, what does this move mean for the Clippers?
Well, to me, it means that they definitely have improved significantly. It's not just because you've got a point guard, a legitimate, bona fide, quintessential point guard, not just somebody who's stout on the defensive end of the floor or who's supposed to be stout on the offensive end of the floor. You have a cerebral guy at the point guard spot to run your offense, freeing up the Paul Georges and Kawhi Leonards of those responsibilities, putting them in a position where they get to just do their thing as opposed to having to facilitate opportunities for themselves. And that's a big, big deal. Then you take into account it's playoff Rondo that we're talking about here because that's what you got him for. We know what he can do. He's a reigning, defending NBA champion. He was on that Lakers squad last year. He knows how to run a team. He's a two-time champion. Experience and all of that stuff that comes with it, he's got that. Then you have to take into consideration the fact that because he's with the Clippers, how much did that potentially do to the Lakers, which is something we'll get into a little bit later, because you're talking about a guy that's incredibly familiar with the things that the Lakers like to do in order to be successful. So he's able to bring his already supreme intellect to the equation. But then when you combine that with his knowledge of what they want to do and how they want to do it, because he's been their teammates, you never know what kind of profound impact that could have. But ultimately, it all equals to this. There is no excuses, and it puts Kawhi Leonard in the line of fire. The pressure has mounted significantly. He wanted a point guard desperately. He's got a point guard. The Clippers have given him everything that he needs. It's on him. He wasn't the man in San Antonio, okay? Even though he was the man in Toronto to some degree, we all know what role Kyle Lowry and them played from a leadership perspective and the continuity and cohesion that they had available to them because they had been accustomed to playing with one another for years. Now it comes down to Kawhi Leonard, the face of this franchise, the man that they mortgaged the farm for. This is what it's all about, and it's on him. And I love it because this is when we're going to find out what this brother's made of. I'm not talking about points, Max. I'm not talking about his personal level of production. I'm talking about his ability as a leader to galvanize the pieces around him to make sure you get max potential or max production out of the parts that surround you. That's what leaders do. We're going to see whether or not Kawhi Leonard has that in him.
Well, we never claimed Kawhi Leonard was a leader, just playing basketball at his position. There are very few who've ever done it better than him. Two-way player. So the issue has not been Kawhi. The issue's been Paul George, who doesn't show up in the playoffs, period. Paul George goes from all-star plus regular season to starter plus in the playoffs. He goes down like a full notch. Kawhi doesn't. Kawhi's a two-time finals MVP. Kawhi was great last playoffs until Game 7. I agree with that. That was a choke job. But Paul George is the guy hitting the side of the backboard. Now, you pointed that out. Now, Rondo makes them better. I wouldn't say no excuses better. I would say better because they had to give up Lou Williams to get him. And it's too bad for the Clippers because the Clippers wanted to add Rondo in the offseason, but they couldn't make it work because Rondo wanted to go get paid. Of course, you want to go get your money. He got it. But now in order to bring him in, they had to exchange a piece. In the regular season, Lou Williams better than Rondo. And it's not like Lou Williams can't play under pressure. It's just that what this team needed, they're playing Kawhi sort of as a point forward That's not really him. He's gotten much better at it, even this year than last year than the year before. He's gotten much better at it. But that's not him naturally. They needed a floor general who can organize their offense and a guy who can help Paul George when it matters most in the playoffs. They got that in Rondo, but they gave up one of the best sixth men ever. I mean, who perennially is in running for sixth man of the year in the history of the game as much as Lou Williams? They had to give that up. They got marginally better. Now, marginally better might be enough because they were knocking at the door as is. But let's not make it like, oh, now they got Rondo. They didn't have to give anything up. No excuses. Kawhi, he ain't there because Kawhi needs an excuse. He's there to help out the offense, and if anyone needs help on that team under pressure, it ain't Kawhi, it's Paul George.
Max, I want to say this about Lou Williams because I don't think you've picked this up. Do you know that he's averaged 7 less minutes a game this year than he did last year? He's shooting 4 less shots per game. This is a guy that he's a specialist as a scorer. When have you ever seen that happen unless something's going awry? He's averaging 4 less shots a game, 7 less minutes a game, 6 less points a game. And obviously the pickup of Luke Kennard has something to do with that to some degree, which is a move I did not like personally. I'm not sold on Luke Kennard on that level, not at the expense of a Lou Williams. And Lou Williams going to ATL, Lemon Pepper Lou, Magic City. I mean, they got advertisements up there right now.
Everyone's happy.
We all understand that. I ain't mad at them. But I will tell you this. At the end of the day, we can't ignore, at some point in time, this is why and I'm going to confess this, Max Kellerman. It's your fault why Kawhi Leonard is receiving heat from this chair. Because when you changed your mind and had the Giannis, the Greek freak, as the best player in the world on a Thursday, and by that Monday, he was the 5th. Okay.
Things are fluid.
You know, you talked about fluidless, right? You talked about Kawhi Leonard. And I recall us having conversations as to whether or not Kawhi Leonard was better than LeBron James because I tried to educate you about how false that was, right? But nevertheless, Kawhi Leonard had warranted all that consideration. And one of the elements that we brought up wasn't just numbers. It was leadership. It was responsibility. It was the pressure of having to produce. All of those things we brought up. And I'm saying right now is the most pressure that Kawhi Leonard has ever been on. Most pressure that he's now you can look at Philly, you can look at Toronto. But remember, when he got traded out of Toronto, that was about him wanting to leave San Antonio. So when he goes to Toronto, you knew what Masai was trying to do when he decided to depart with DeMar DeRozan in favor of Kawhi Leonard. We get all of that, Max, because he went for it, and we understand that. But what I'm saying to you is that they're in Canada. He really just wanted to depart from San Antonio. He really wanted to go from San Antonio to L.A., and the Spurs would not be cooperative, so they shipped him out of the country, and we got that. The point that I'm trying to make is that even though from a basketball perspective, you looked at Toronto and you said they got a shot, there was a debate as to whether or not they would have beaten Philly in that series, even though it went 7 games.
And
there was
what
a debate
happened?
about that. They did.
Why'd they beat him?
No, they did him. Kawhi Leonard with
Hit one of the greatest shots of all time.
Who traveled before he took the shot. But
nevertheless,
Jordan
pushed off.
Okay.
You know, I mean,
I disagree. I don't recall seeing a push-off on Jordan. I don't recall seeing a push-off. I'm just saying, you can look at Kawhi Leonard right now, and you can make a legitimate argument. This is the first time he has been on this spotlight from the standpoint of, all right, what you going to do now?
Yeah, but here's the problem.
It's your show now.
Here's the problem.
It's your show.
Here's the problem with what you're saying. He's a 2-time Finals MVP, not one 2-time. Now, the second time was in Toronto, and you correctly point out that if KD wasn't hurt, of course, Golden State crushes them.
Sweet.
But by the way, if KD's not hurt, Golden State crushes everybody ever. Like, that team was unstoppable.
So he's one of the ones that he would have crushed.
So you talk about injuries. So now you're saying, well, now it's on Kawhi, even though he's a 2-time Finals MVP, twice. Okay. You know what they say? In nature, twice can be coincidence, 3 times is pattern.
Okay.
Here's the thing.
We ain't pattern yet.
If he does it again, you know what I'm going to hear from you next year?
Not a word.
Here's what I'm going to hear.
Not a word.
Oh, AD is coming off injury. Oh, KD was compromised.
No.
What's the difference?
Completely false. Nice try, though, but completely false. Here's why. Max Kellerman, look at the Western Conference. You got Denver. You got Utah. We're getting into all of this as the show progresses. You got Denver. You got Utah. You got Portland. All right. The Lakers are expecting AD and LeBron to come back. LeBron's going to be fine.
You're not expecting AD back 100%.
You're absolutely right. I'm worried about AD, but I ain't worried about LeBron at all. LeBron's just rested. He's chilling. He deserves it. Take a month off. No problem, okay? Then we go to the Eastern Conference. Now, you only got to face one of them if you're coming out of the West. That's true, but it's still Milwaukee. it's still Philadelphia, it's still Miami, and obviously Brooklyn. And so when I look at it from that perspective, whoever comes out of the East is going to be incredibly formidable. It's not a given that the West is going to win the chip. And because of that reality at all, the bottom line is that I'm not going to say that about Kawhi.
You're holding it against Kawhi that he's not as good a GM as LeBron, basically. Forget about leadership.
No.
Kawhi made them go after
No, that's
Paul.
you.
Hold up.
You talking about GM. I'm
go
talking
after
leadership.
Paul George. And Paul George, as a second banana, has not been good enough without a third guy there.
I am not absolving Paul George. I am not saying that Paul George doesn't need to step up his game in the postseason.
Right.
What I'm saying is that he shouldn't be more the focal point than Kawhi.
Put it this way.
That's what I'm saying.
Put it this way. Kawhi, because he's not a point guard, not a point forward like LeBron, right? Kawhi needs a dude like that. He's got it in Rondo.
He could be.
He's got it in Rondo. He needs
Kawhi can pass, he can handle, he can shoot.
the reason
he can post up, he can do it all.
The reason they're not favored is because Paul George ain't AD. He's not AD. He's not KD. He's not James Harden. He is a half step below. That's why.
Max,
let's be honest.
You're not listening, Max, because I didn't say Kawhi in championship. I said, what have I said Kawhi owes us?
Western Conference Finals.
What did I say? No. I said he owes us a matchup against LeBron.
Right, I agree with that.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
In other words,
if that's the standard, he's got to get to a matchup with LeBron.
Get to that point. Let's find out. You came to L.A. You dangled yourself as the champion with the crown hanging from your mirror. You said it's a new king.
No argument
all right?
there.
And LeBron was waiting for him, and they folded with
no
a 3-1
argument there.
lead.
As long as you're not talking chip or bust.
I'm not talking chip.
When LeBron got AD and KD got Harden and Kyrie.
I will say Western Conference. I will say Western Conference champions, and I will say, and I want him against LeBron. I think he owes us that.
Okay, I think that's fair.
That's fair.
All right, guys. 44 players were traded yesterday. That's the most in a single day in 30 years. We got a lot more to get to. Let's head to Miami now, one of Stephen A's favorite places. The Miami Heat acquired Victor Oladipo in a trade with the Rockets and are expected to be frontrunners for LaMarcus Aldridge. The veteran big man completed a buyout with the Spurs. There's the big three in the East, fellas, and then there's everybody else. You know who they are, the Bucks, the Sixers, the Nets. But keep in mind, Miami, they came from behind last year. They were the underdogs, and they are the defending Eastern Conference champions. Max Kellerman. Should the East big three worry about Miami?
Yeah, absolutely. Miami, it's a big four now. Let's be honest. Miami underachieved early. We knew that, regression to the mean. It doesn't always mean you go backwards. It means you go back to what you expect. That's what's good. That was happening with Miami anyway before the trade. But you know what this is like? It's like a Space Jam. They don't have a Jordan on that team. The other teams